Okay, so for this time, now, this is our kind of first like all hands type meeting. As I said before, we won't do all that many of these. I think probably we might do one every week at the beginning, but we might kind of lower it to once every other week and stuff like that. We do have those channels in the Discord now to start conversations around these different areas. And of course, each area has someone who is running it, but anyone else who wants to participate and join in, they can do that. Now, the same as I've been saying to the players for the last couple of days, this is, of course, a very new style of project and a new way of doing things. And having a big staff is also a new sort of thing, especially when we're online. So we are going to be constantly like making mistakes. We are going to be having to improve on things and change things as we go. So we are actually going to start doing things already in a slightly different way. But what we can do now is I'd like to just get a kind of update on each of the areas that I mentioned before from the people who are in charge of them. And we'll do that every time we do one of these kind of all hands, just so that everyone can see what's going on in that area and what the person's thinking about. So the way we'll do it is we'll have a short summary of your area, like up to 5 minutes max, but if it takes 2 minutes, that's completely fine. And then just free for all feedback comments. After the meeting today, I will be sending you guys each individual my thoughts and my comments and the things that I want us to try for next week. But I wanted to hear what everyone thinks about it first, before we kind of jump into what will actually change going forward for next week. So we'll just start in the order that we had in that first Discord message. So it'll be Thomas with the drafting, Kiao with the scouting, Senan with items of champions, Rice with data and sheets, and then finishing off with Victor for all the scheduling, practical kind of stuff. And then I'll talk at the end about everything else, everything that is going to change and the way that I want things to change and the way that I want to try and incorporate all of you. As before, I said I wanted to get you guys involved kind of gradually so that we're not just having 8 of us in the Discord plus the 5 players. And I think I want to do that in a slightly different way now, going forward, because I think the idea of us gradually being able to introduce you when we're sort of only scrimming 2 or 3 times a week, and we want to kind of cut down on meetings and all those kind of things, is already proving quite difficult. So I do definitely want to get you guys all more involved, especially involved with each other, but even involved with the players as well, where possible. That's still the goal. It's just taking a bit longer, and there's a bit more things to balance, which is one of those things that it's sort of predictable, but also you don't know what are the things that are going to be the issues and sticking points, which is why we can't pre-plan for it. So it will be about constantly adapting. Now, Thomas, if you can start us off with the draft stuff, and I'm going to quickly go and grab a water, but I will be listening because I've got my headphones on.
Yeah.
So if you start us off with draft.
Okay, so as John say, I'm in charge of all the drafting part. My main job for now is framing the discussion during the drafts, as much as I can. I make also the draft prep for officials, like for NORD and Verdant, with the help of.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I've realized I might have not have explained this properly. What I mean is a summary of how your week's been. So we all know each other now. I mean, I know some people weren't here at the very first one, but we don't need to do the introductory part. Just like, how have you found doing draft? What are the things that have been really good? What are the things that have been really bad? What are the things that you might be changing going forward? All that kind of stuff.
Okay. Well, so about the process of all of it, I think that the framing that we're making now during the draft is good. I think I can do better because I'm still learning to frame all this discussion. I was not used to that in my previous teams. But I think we should start at some point to start giving to the players some input about champions, because we got 38 games of scrims for now, and then I've got a lot of data about what worked for us and what doesn't work for us. So I think now I can start to say, okay, this will work for us, this doesn't work for us. That's something that I keep the track on. I have a doc that I fill after every scrim with all the draft that we've made, all the draft of the opponent, and I track our win rate on champions and against all the champions that we play against. Just quick stat, but like we are losing. We have 33% win rate into Wukong and Corki in 6 games. So I think we don't know how to play into Wukong and Corki. And on the opposite, we've got like 80% win rate with Cassante on 5 games. So Cassante works pretty well for us. Thing that I'm working on right now that I haven't done with the team is I'm still upgrading my fearless tool. The idea is to have like a complete document that I can share to the players, because I know Lucas, for example, is like having a list of the champions and just make little like cross on the side. The idea is for them to have like an easy tool to just like open and keep the track. Like I could update it myself and they see it on the dock visually, so they can keep the track of what is out, what is in. So for now, I just have like an alpha, something that I use on my side, where I have all the players' champions pool, and it goes gray when it's out, but it's not like I make it manually after every game. The idea is like I will try to connect it to my document where I just like fill the drafts. So it's easier as I fill the draft. It goes gray, so the player have the document where it goes gray, and it's good. And yeah, for now, this is my main topic is this fearless thing. And now that I've got some like a bunch of games to have some data about what works for us and what doesn't work for us, I will try to make a report to everyone to tell you how champions work with us or not.
All right, sounds good. And then so like I said, we'll for now open it up to anyone to have any thoughts and suggestions about how we're doing draft, how we organize the stuff around the draft. Has anyone got or seen a sort of fearless tool and has any ideas around that? I mean, I think it sounds good if you can just fill in the draft and then every player can see the champions that gray out from their own champ pool. I think that's a great idea. So if we can get that set up, I think that would be great. Not necessarily the specifics around what we drafted, because that's not a very productive thing for all of us to listen to. You can put that in the NLC staff. There's a draft chat. We can start using these chats. So if there's gameplay stuff of ours that you want to comment on, put it in the gameplay section. If there's draft stuff of ours you want to comment on, put it in the draft section, items, scouting, etc. Please just put it in the text channels that are there in the server. But anyone have thoughts about the draft that they want to do or give feedback?
Yeah, I was about to mention. I remember like there was a coach. I don't remember who it was, but there was a coach that posted online on Twitter that they already had like a full fearless tool that was available online for everyone.
Seal has one to
practice.
Yeah,
right? Well, Seal,
yeah. Well, we're doing things. We're talking about managing our own fearless draft in terms of like seeing what champs have been picked already, rather than practicing fearless draft. Although that's the other thing that I would like to get you and, as I mentioned, with Nicholas, start doing is practicing some fearless drafts. I think would be good because that's coming up soon.
Yeah, I forgot to answer yesterday, but yeah,
No,
I'm definitely down.
I had a thought as well.
Yeah.
Regarding I don't know how you want to do it, but like having a section like doing the sheet or whatever you want to do with champions that are, I believe there will be champions that are specifically good in like game 4 and 5 in like that will always be good in fearless, right? I know teams like Los Ratones, for example, they have like certain champions as well that they are like these champions we want to start talking about in game 4, game 5. I know Zac is a pick, right? Like when stuff like Puppy and all that kind of stuff is done, right? These champions become mega OP. I think maybe having a section for that would be a good idea. Maybe having a discussion about like, what champs will most likely always be good in 4 and 5 and stuff like that.
That could be, for me, I think I love the idea. I think that having it as a section for champions that are good in 4 and 5 doesn't make as much sense as having a section where it's like, here are champions with limited counters, so that when they're gone, so exactly your one, right? Like where you can play Zach in game 2, Zach could be insane because Talia and Poppy and whatever are gone in game 1, and so that I think that's great. I don't know how that would work, but that would be awesome to have like a champs where in our matchup lists there's 1 or 2 champions in the game that make them much harder, and when those champions are gone, us knowing it and realizing it first is going to be crucial, because obviously if they take the Zac and we're like, oh shit, we don't have Poppy or Talia or a good matchup top into it or whatever it needs, I don't know what else might it need. Realizing that first you're right, is going to be really crucial for Fearless, because obviously the weird thing about Fearless is the first game might be the most representative of the team's strength, but you don't get more points for winning the first game than you do for winning the 5th game. So knowing those things I think can be really useful.
Yeah, my only thing about that, and it was a discussion that I had with Sinin yesterday, is that I think those kind of spicy pick we are talking about, getting them in the 5 games, I think it's really important to have like some spicy pick for the first game, because like the 5 games, if you're really good, we're gonna play BO5. We are looking to make 3-0, like 3-0. So we are looking to play only 3 games. And like if you have some spicy pick that you are really good on for the first game, make the second game easier to win. And we all know that once you have win the first and the second game, you have the mental edge on the opponent. And so for the third game, they're panicking, and most likely I think they're gonna have like bad drafts.
Okay, I mean that's an interesting point. I'd like to hear everyone else's opinion on it, because my gut would be that actually cheese picks are worse in Fearless early on than in other versions, because the thing of like taking off meta stuff in game 1 in a best of 5 normally is that you can always go back to the meta stuff. But if we do like a couple of stranger drafts and they get all the traditional power picks, we can't then get the traditional power picks in game 3. But what would other people think on that?
Does Fearless BO5s work similar to NA, where in game 4 you don't have 4 5s and then game 5 you have no bans?
No, it's full bans every game.
Oh
Yeah.
Full
Okay,
bans
that's
every
fair.
game and full stacking Fearless. So by game 5, you've got 40 champs gone plus.
Yeah, because what I was going to say is in NA, how it worked
Yeah.
is like the moment you got to game 4, game 5, it was like now the OPs are like back. So it made more sense to actually kind of game 1 have more like specific drafts that you want to do stuff that might not be like the most OP champs. So kind of similar what you said, but that made a lot of sense in NA because, like I said, then in game 5, everything OP was open. So then you had to trade like the OPs. There was no like way around it. But I guess if there's constantly bans, then yeah, I don't think there's that much value from not prioritizing the strongest things from game 1.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a good idea to have specific combos ready, but I think we're more likely to pull those out later in the draft, aren't we? Well, we can see.
I wouldn't be surprised if they change, by the way, the bans rule. Obviously, we can't do with that now, but usually the NLC admins like to
change things
listen
up,
to feedback and change things up if everyone wants to. So,
but
I think the rule is a bit ridiculous that we have bans for like every phase.
I think it's fun.
But
That's
I think actually this is the better thing that we can have
Really?
in Fearless, is have these full things banned.
Especially for us, by the way, because I've been saying this when people were asking on the stream, like how much do you give away to show your picks? We give away so much less streaming all our scrims because it's Fearless.
Yeah, that's fair.
Which is good for us. So if we can keep them at it, I think that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, I will know in case they ask the owners if we want to change the rules.
Yeah, thanks.
Just a short point to correct, because I think I misexplained myself. For example, we have like in our team we have like Shen and Kha'Zix, which work really good for us. I think this is the kind of pick that we could be looking for game 1, for example. Like I mean, not having a full draft with weird pick, but like getting out something like Shen or Kha'Zix in the first game, if it's good, of course. It's really good because it let us like from what I see from every draft that we've made in Fearless, in third game you still have like a lot of OP champs. And the thing is, if you take out some spice peak for game 1, then for game 2 and 3 you have like almost all the OP champs that's still up. And I think that, as you said, we are a team that can play almost everything due to the experience of the players. So I think some spice peak like this in game 1 allow the game 3 to be a regular game.
Okay. Well, we won't go back and forward on it now.
Yeah.
What I'd like is for you guys, anyone who wants to have the discussion, put your thoughts in the draft section of the Discord, because I think it's a really interesting one. So for me, I'm going to summarize and then we'll move on to the next section. First thing is that we need to finish building the tool. The next thing is that if we can find a way to have this like counters gone tool, I don't know how to describe it, but like if we have a few champions that are not good because enemy could play XYZ, then making sure we find a way that when those are gone, we realize it first will be really useful. Again, if you have a sheet where you're putting in the drafts, it could be that there is, I don't know, okay. I shouldn't talk about how like Excel sheets or spreadsheets work because I have no idea. But my guess is that once you put them in somewhere, you can have champion pools where it grays out the ones that are gone. But then if our champion pools also have champs where I'll play this, if the enemy couldn't get 1, 2, 3, then finding a way to like have a check of those lists as well would be super useful. So those things, and then the last thing is we need to start deciding before we get to best of 5 Fearless, which is still a while away, by the way, still ages away.
Yeah.
It's best of 3 Fearless first, which I think is much more like just a standard game. We need to decide: do we want to bring the weird picks early on or later on? And I think that again comes down to like counters and stuff like that too. So that's draft done. Next one, what did I say next on the list? Scouting. How was the scouting thing for this week? How did you find it, and what are you sort of thinking about for next week?
Yeah, so I think for this week it was like a really nice week to start off with it being Los Ratones, because obviously there's so many scrims I was able to like watch and track data and the information from, I suppose. I think it'll be harder to do for other teams, like even we've got games in a couple of days. I think it's much harder to find exactly the same amount of information in the same amount of detail, but I think it was interesting to be able to kind of watch only from their POV, because then when I was like talking to you or talking to Thomas about the like drafting, it was kind of interesting to hear what you guys are gonna like attempt to do, or what you guys like how you guys have been practicing in comparison to them. Ended up putting all the drafts in one sheet, ended up putting the champion pools in the same one. Had a chat with Thomas about it. I think it was a nice little conversation. I also took down more gameplay related information rather than draft information, I suppose, because obviously I am not an analyst, right? And that included things like which objectives they did on spawn within 13 seconds, kind of what they did around objectives, anything that like stands out in their objective take. So like Bowser's involvement in objectives, I think, is very interesting. No team really plays using the fact that he will just go and proxy you 45 seconds before objective, and now it's like, well, you pick what you're gonna do about it, you know. So I think that was interesting. I think the one thing that I'm not sure if I would say I struggled with necessarily, but it was just the first time I've ever recorded kind of like a video like that where no one's talking back to me and I'm just talking to myself. And I think I was kind of going on some tangents here and there, and not that it's that bad for it to be 12 minutes, but I think it could have maybe been like 8. I don't think it needed to be a full 12. So maybe having like a script specifically, or that I'm actually following and not just speaking like I would be kind of conducting a presentation with some players would be a better thing to do for the future. But yeah, I think that's mostly the summary.
Great. Anyone have any feedback on the scouting stuff? Obviously, we all got to see the video and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think like I mean I completely get the point that it's gonna be harder to do prep against other teams where there's not that much info, right? I don't know, like I'm not data analyst either, but I think I've seen a lot of stuff with like us tracking stats and all that kind of stuff, right? I don't know if that would be like a way to prepare, like use data in scouting a bit more, if that would like make it easier for you or something like that.
It's because they have 2 games, right? It's not that we can't get the data of those 2
Yeah.
games, but
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. There's not that much data to pull. That's what I mean, right? But like, I'm just saying, if it could help, maybe like getting some stats,
Yeah,
and if that could give you some more to talk about or
if
whatever,
we
right?
if we had
Yeah,
a way
for
to find like hidden solo queue accounts and stuff, but I don't think we do at the moment, unless Bryce, you have one. Other than that, I don't think the rest of us do. I've seen those solo queue tracker tools before, but that's mostly for like LEC teams and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Cool.
It
All
could
right.
even be like, I don't know, damage per like how much damage they've done pre-15 or whatever, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I think
more
could
stuff like
be
that.
even like more maybe in depth or like different information, just specific things I find in the small amount of games. Even doesn't even have to necessarily be like data, but like you said, like something more specific, tailored towards a small section.
Yeah. I think for me, I mean, I'll like I said, I'll give you guys feedback as well individually after this. But for me, the crucial thing for scouting is always going to be like, what's the one thing that we really want to consider? And even if there's a small sample size, there's still going to be like a one thing. Obviously, our one thing is not going to be as specific as when it's like lost returns. And we were talking about, okay, we need to slow them down, which we completely didn't do, but that's okay. It's like still, what's the one thing? So like the one thing to bear in mind against Bulldog, maybe we just don't let them have. I didn't see the game that they won where he got Callista or Draven or something. Like, is it as simple as that? Like, this team is neutered if they don't have Callista Draven, or was that more actually because they were playing stronger competition, or they fell really behind against Verdant, for example, or those kind of things? That would be really useful, I think, regardless of whether it's just 1 or 2 games, and we just have to all be aware, including the players, that the conclusions we draw from 1 or 2 games have to be a bit softer than the ones that we draw from multiple games. But I think it can still be useful where knowing their damage per minute before 14 or something like that, I think that's only going to be useful when you have a lot of stats and you can say, right, this is definitely an early game team or things like that. Like another one for me is forward percentage, which I think is a fantastic stat to know about for a team that you're scouting, but for 2 games, it's maybe not as specific. And we also have the same problem that I can't remember. I was talking to Duffman about this. I can't remember exactly how he phrased it, but it was quite nice. Where it's like some teams are not quite sure of how they want to play, so how would we know how they want to play? Whereas there'll be some teams where it's like going to be very specific, right? Like Bowser's forward percentage is going to be massive. Not that we wouldn't already know that, but that would be a very useful thing to know if you didn't know him as a player.
Yeah, I think they're a very good, like almost like test subject team. Like if you were running an esports org, being like, "Hey, we're looking for someone to do scouting. Like, here's LR," and then like you look for the specific things about LR.
Yeah.
I think it's like a good, test subject.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. That's fairly simple then. So we'll go individually about what we should look at for next week and those kind of things. But I think that's a little bit more standard. The other thing, though, again, I'm going to say this after everyone's thing, so you're going to be sick of hearing it, but I really want to make it happen. Do right in the enemy scouting, especially as some of you might know some of these players. Please don't assume that we all know them. I can speak for myself and say that I basically don't know anyone in the NLC. So if you do know them, if you've played against them last year, or you know of them, or you played against them in any other league, don't assume that other people will know. So please just put it in the enemy scouting. If everyone's played against Exafang and knows that this is the thing to consider, those kind of things can be really useful.
I'm the one that brings Exofing to competition, so I know him pretty well.
There you go. So put that openly, not between the two of you. Put that openly in the enemy scouting thing, please. If you've got anything from any of the teams that you play against, or I don't know if anyone here is like challenger in solo queue. If you play against them in solo queue and you have some thoughts, just put it in, because obviously then it will be on Cal to ignore your thoughts if necessary, but still that's what we'll but it's still good to have them up, and then he could make the best read with all the information that we can provide, because it's not just the information from the 2 games and any solo queue accounts, it's the information of the 8 of us plus the other people who couldn't make the meeting and are going to listen to the VOD, so we can really utilize that. And definitely don't assume that like I know these players, everyone knows these players. Me personally, I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know the players in any of the teams other than like ours, Ruddy, and Lost Returns. So, great. Next one, Senan, items, champions, that kind of thing.
Okay, yeah. So to start with how this week's been going, overall, there hasn't been any like massive shifts in the meta or anything. So with the season 15 changes, so staying on top of things has been, yeah, pretty good. What I'm currently spending a lot of my time on is reviewing our own games from scrims and officials, and noting down and basically finding any mistakes I was able to identify. Yeah, I've been focusing a lot on this because honestly, I think quite consistently I'm spotting what I would consider quite basic mistakes. So I think trying to cut out a lot of these silly mistakes, well, yeah, it's quite important. I think even looking back to the Los Ratones games, there was a few things that could have definitely affected the early game. I've also spent a decent amount of time looking at other regions and solo queue data, which I found some unique picks that I think are really strong. But obviously, maybe they're not like fully practical in terms of like what our players play and if they fit into our like general play style. In terms of what I'm struggling with, I think the main thing is the best way to transfer information to players. I think the polished videos are really good for big changes or trends like a new patch or champion. But I think if it's just understanding like their thought process behind a specific item in a scrim and why I think it might not have been the best choice, I think that's maybe not always the best way to do it. So yeah, that's all I've kind of really got. If anyone has any suggestions on other stuff, and I guess also additionally, maybe scouting or data analysts may spot like trends in items or champions that I might overlook, then yeah, feel free to give me a heads up on them.
I mean, I was thinking like the thing I always do when I was actually like more in the coaching things is like, do you like just track OTPs on what they're building? Because there are lots of random OTPs that come up with a build before it actually like gets meta.
Yeah,
Like
I
if you
do.
look at Molecule, he always does that, right? He tracks a bunch of random solo queue players in Korea, China, you name it, and then he pops up for a
Yeah.
random build and then he goes up.
I've do that on Twitter, and also I think K-Drill's new website DPM, they've now got like a list of all OTPs for
Oh yeah.
each champion, so that's what I've been doing, but maybe there's a better way.
They're making these things too easy these days.
Cool. Yeah, I think finding a way to get it to the players is going to be a kind of crucial component of this. Like I say, at the end, I'm going to explain what I want to do with this like videos section of the Discord, which is going to be new. I think what could be useful is, again, really to utilize the NLC like staff section first. So I'm going to change items and champions. I'm going to do it in a combo. So any like new champions that come up, please write them in there. Don't assume that everyone else has seen them. Don't assume that Zenon has seen them. If we can make his job easier by just dropping items, champions, builds in that section first, and then he can be the one in charge of deciding whether we get it to the players, and we'll go back and forward about how we want to get it to the players as well. And I can again explain all that more at the end. Anyone have any feedback or ideas on that, on how we try and adapt like builds? Because this is always the question, and this question goes all the way. There's plenty of LEC teams who some of their staff know that they're building things a little bit wrong, and the question is like, how do we get them to not do that? Because it's like, okay, in this game, maybe you should have gone this thing, and that's one part of it. But in the next game with stuff different. So I like your point about like we took cleanse right in the Lost Ratones game. What was the
Yeah,
thing we were playing
yeah.
against? When we were playing against just huge amounts of dive and CC, and maybe it is the best thing to take, but it definitely is worth having a conversation with Matty about. But the question is, how do you then evaluate next time what's best, and all that kind of stuff. So any feedback on how we're doing currently with the items and champions, and things that you would want us or suggest to change? Again, focus on the process, not like, oh, I noticed this item was wrong or anything like that, because that should just be going in the staff section of the Discord.
Um,
No, I mean anyone
in
else
terms of-
feedback for you?
oh yeah, I was gonna say.
No?
I mean, my opinion on it is that if they won't be playing those items or champions in solo queue, I mean, using those items and playing those champions in solo queue, it's really hard for them to understand that item can be good or bad. That's my opinion, because they're basing their opinion mainly, in my eyes. I mean, I'm also a player, and I will base my opinion from LCK, LPL players mainly. And especially when playing high elo, like, of course, you're gonna go and take a look at Ruler, let's say, and see what he does, or other players, or maybe even like high elo Vantrix. But yeah, if people won't be like, if Ruler is not going to be building it, or anyone who they think it's better than them, they're not gonna build it either. And there's no way, unless they can see it and feel it in their hands that it's good. Now, I'm not sure how much time is needed for them. Like, for example, if they try to one scrim and something goes wrong and they feel it's bad, they're not gonna play it again. So I think, like, maybe if they play solo queue, and then, like, if they're using those champs or items there, then they can see it. Otherwise, it's hard in my eyes.
In that case, the thing I would bounce off that would be, we should be suggesting to try stuff out rather than telling them to do things differently. So it's like, okay, most people are going this item rather than the item that you built. I don't know. Loads of people are trying Hullbreaker Varus. Do you want to give it a go in solo queue, rather than we should build Hullbreaker third here rather than whatever we built?
It's always a suggestion, I guess. For sure.
And a suggestion for them to try it in solo queue rather than.
Yeah. I felt as well from my experience that, like, a lot of times when they play certain champion, let's put as an example, like, you play Varus and they're playing that champion solo queue, and then they lose like 2-3 games, and this is the moment where their brain is like, okay, I need to change something. And this is the moment where that suggestion that you suggested like 1 week ago might work for them. That's my experience from positional coaching.
True.
So yeah, that's it by me.
Yeah, sometimes you can show them a little bit of data as well, right? So, for example, my support was like, he kept going unflinching, like the little rune that you get when you get like armor and MR when you're CC'd.
Yeah.
But I kept telling him, just go overgrowth, because by the time you're level 5 or something, overgrowth already outvalues unflinching. And unflinching is very like conditional. You need to be CC'd and stuff like that before it actually has value, right? So I just made like a small sheet for him, and he's like, okay, sure, It took him that sheet until he was like finally convinced. Because I told him like 3 times, he was like, nah, this 3 MR at level 3 is useful, right? Stuff like that.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway for me is that each player will be different. There'll be some who are more convinced by data. There'll be some who are never convinced by data and need to experience it, and vice versa. And gradually working that out with our players, I think, will be useful. I know I already have opinions about which would be which, but obviously that's something that we need to kind of find with the items themselves. Okay, good. So again, do put that stuff in the staff chats. I want to get these staff chats like actually going. I want to have your opinions on all these things, and I want to see them happening. It's great if you want to talk privately, sure, but talk privately, come to conclusions, put them in the chat if you're going to talk privately. If not, just you can obviously talk publicly as well. Next one then, so data and sheets and stuff like that.
Yeah. Easiest if I stream it, because basically my progress so far is that Pina, he gave me full access to Grid on Monday, and then I was like just in the evenings building this dashboard, right? So for right now, as you can see, there's lots of like useless data in between. So for example, this platform game ID doesn't really matter for you guys, and there's like lots of stuff in between that's like very game duration. It's very deep in commas and stuff like that and decimals. But all the basic data that has been played on TR right? So obviously, if you guys scrim off TR, I can't get the data because Riot doesn't really collect the data. But everything that has been on TR is basically collected in this sheet. I did notice I'm missing some no way games, but then when I checked, I think he played his first few scrims with you guys on like some generic NORD account, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like they only record his actual no way account when he's on his no
Yeah.
ways account, right? So yeah, I'm missing some of that data, but eventually it doesn't really matter the more games that you play. But basically, I have all the basic data. It's collected. It's in a sheet. It doesn't look that great yet, but it's just in a very simple table.
Yeah. Cool. For me, like, we'll wait till you're finished before I start to suggest things,
Yeah.
right? Because otherwise it's a bit silly.
I mean, there's not much more than this. So, yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, I mean, if that's it, then that's super simple. Like I said before, you've already put your stuff in the data sheet. I think there's some definite thing now that Dayan's going to start working with people individually. I like the VOD clip timings. I think is perfect. So we can also get used to that.
I'm talking to him today as well. So
perfect. Great. All right. Super simple one. In which case,
and obviously there are some Atacon issues that everyone is running into. It's Riot again.
Yeah.
I don't know. They just make it very hard.
There's also the grid is also not letting us download ruffle files at the moment, which is also another thing that's quite annoying. So I have to get them sent from a player instead. Okay. Right. Simple. Victor, you want to take the last section, like scheduling, practical stuff? I don't know if there's much to go over here, but still.
Yeah, I mean, I can give some updates basically, but otherwise, yeah. So basically, right now I'm working on the emotes still. We should have gotten them for this week, but we're making a lot of changes, so we should have them for next Wednesday. We'll try to send you some sketches so that you can give feedback if you guys want. After that, I'm also working on the jersey. We will have the prototypes of the jersey for the bootcamp. And then I'm also working on the bootcamp. We should meet John to talk about schedule day by day. It's important. And I kind of want to do it as you want to do it, basically. So we can like suggest something to Michel, who is already there basically and doing a lot of the scheduling himself.
Okay.
And then what else? Oh yeah, and then scrims. I'm booking scrims right now. So as I mentioned already, I will gamble on what place we will get for the groups. I think since we lost already once to Los Ratones, I don't think they will lose to Virgin. So I will just look to book scrims as if we were second of the group, basically.
Yeah.
And if we have another position, then I will just cancel the scrims. It's fine.
Yeah. Sounds good. I think that's definitely the right way around. And then for me, the one thing actually to sort of coordinate with, because Rice, you were talking about it in the Discord.
Right. I can show it as well right now, right?
Yeah, that would be nice. If you can connect the calendar to the Discord, then that I think can work. Like I said, it's not something that I necessarily need, and maybe you guys don't need. But on the other hand, there's no reason not to have it. It's just another way to see what's coming up.
So the way it works is that basically there's just a Discord bot. It connects to the Google Calendar, and then it just shows like these events. It just shows up on like Discord events, right? The little block on the top, left, right.
Great.
There's like reminders. So, for example, when you put something new in the calendar or you cancel it, there's a reminder. And then there's like a full schedule of the week that is just posted once a day or once every 2 days, whenever you want it. And then the players get a reminder of like what is going on every time there's like a new thing.
Great.
Okay. That works for us because I have to remind some of my players like 5 times before they show up to something, right?
Yeah.
And now I just have a bot that does it, and then it's not easier.
Yeah. I like that. Like, I always said this from the very beginning, like I want to treat these players like professionals, but it's still fine if it's automated from our side. Like we can.
Yeah, it depends on what Pina wants, right? Because if you want this Pina, then I could just set it up with you like 15, 20 minutes. Or whoever's like responsible for Google Calendar.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be cool, but I don't think it's necessarily needed. If it takes some of your time, I think don't worry about it for now.
Yeah, that's fine. That's also fine, obviously.
Cool. Anything else for schedule stuff? You were saying one thing that we need to consider, I think, especially if we go later in the tournament, because of
Yeah.
course we're still struggling to find people who are good enough from and able to stream with us. Considering Freddie did say he doesn't mind scrimming and then streaming as long as we start scrims at like 1 or 2. We
Yeah.
could also start at some point to look for maybe like if we can find an LFL team or whatever to scrim on Saturday, Sunday, especially when there's
Yeah.
LEC already going on, because our stream will have less viewers. I mean, Freddy's might not, but all like Lucas or Eric especially, it's like people who are streaming in English, and the reason that people watch them is because they're interested in mostly the competitive side of things. They're obviously going to be more likely to watch the LEC than watch our games. So I think for now, I think it's still okay. But something to bear in mind for the future, that if he is open to the idea of, okay, we scrim from 1 till 6 and then we play, and then he can stream after that, then that could be a really good way to find some kind of like better scrims.
Yeah. Actually, I will ask Jan, because I refused a lot of LFL teams because of that already.
Yeah.
Sadly.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, on paper, like we should be able to get insanely good scrims. It's just the fact that we're streaming them all, I think. So
Exactly. Yeah.
we can
I mean,
find that.
I wouldn't mind, like, my own team is in LFL 2, where, like, I would say we're a decent team. Like, if you guys would be open to scrim, I could probably just find something with the manager.
I mean, we can try. I think
it would
we
be.
can try streaming.
I think
Or like LFL 2, I
if
don't know
for
if guys...
LFL2, it would have to be streamed, I think, because
Yeah.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be an
that
issue, I think.
same issue.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'll let you know then, yeah.
Okay. Anyone else have feedback on all the scheduling practical stuff? I don't know how that would even work, but if there is something you wanted to say on it in terms of the way things have been done, anyone have any comments? No? Okay. Well, in that case, I'll do a brief update on how I think the team is going, and then I'll talk a little bit about what I want to do for the future, what I want to change in terms of the Discord. So first things first, I think we're actually in a very good spot. I think that yesterday was probably some of, if not the most productive scrims that we've had, which is really good. It's really good from my point of view that we're scrimming we played Los Ratones first week, because they're one of the best teams, if not the best team, that will let us stream against them. Which is very, very useful. And also the thing that they're the best at is the thing that we're the worst at from my point of view. We still need to just put way more emphasis on the waves and on playing correctly as a team, rather than falling into this mess of like chasing kills around and all that kind of thing. It's not something that was a shock, I have to say. I think that every team that I've been on, we trick ourselves to the same thing. You start at the beginning and you all are aware that the waves are the thing that matters. We need to generate time and then use time, and then generate time and then use time, and then, over and over. But then you do scrims and you start to think that you gradually trick yourselves that you can actually like chase kills and make the game work by being super aggressive, and we can play like an LPL team and just go for fights all the time rather than go for the waves. And then you get to a competitive game, or you play against a team that's really playing disciplined, which is why I think it was actually good in a way to play the D&D team before, because they were really good at this. And suddenly it's like we just don't have time to do anything, and it falls apart quite quickly. So always going to have that kind of wake-up call at some stage, and I think it was really good to have it early on, and really good to have that scrim yesterday as well, where we could just re-emphasize it, take it straight from, okay, biggest feedback of how we played from the competitive games, other than the small details, is this, into a scrim where it was really important. And we did have that massive long discussion about it. But for me, like I said on the stream, if anyone was watching that, I genuinely think that talk after game 3 yesterday is like one of the best moments so far of the split, even though it was just Lucas and Eric kind of going back and forward for a long time. It's still really, really important. So keeping that up will be important. That's kind of the update from the team side of things. As this is being recorded, I won't talk about how the bracket shakes out and all that kind of stuff, because I think it's better just saved, and I'll drop it in a message. So the next thing is that we're still trying to work out how's the best to do Discord, how's the best to do meetings and all that kind of thing. I think that, especially because we're streamed, but actually I think this is something that I would probably look to do anyway. I want to cut down on the long meetings before the scrims. I think that we don't have the time to make them all good enough to be worth it. So obviously half an hour of time for 7 people in the Discord plus like 3 people watching. Let's say like it's 300 minutes of our time, and we don't have the prep time to make them worth it. So sometimes they have been worth it and sometimes they haven't been. And so what I would like us to change is I want to start doing short videos more often. So what this will be is it will be on Discord. It will be us recording it as coaches and putting it in that videos section of the Discord. So there are a couple of examples there, which are plays from the competitive game. You'll have to let me organize it a bit because people instantly started replying in the channel where I want people to reply in the thread. We're splitting things up into generating time, using time, team fighting. That's the gameplay stuff. Then there's a scouting one, and there's an items and champions one. What I want us to do is basically to fill those up with stuff. So if you see anything that falls into one of those things, absolutely make a little video about it. So if it's LPL, LCK, okay, the way they set up this Baron is really interesting. I think this, and this, great. Or it's, okay, I watched the game from Bulldog and they did this really weird setup in both their games on the Herald. Great. All those kind of things. But what I still want to do is the players don't see things until it's gone through me, because I want to do a check on it first. Because of course this is going to be like a new way of doing things, and it will be a bit new for everybody. And I still want to ensure that the stuff that they're receiving is the highest value possible, because I am going to tell them that they have to watch all the videos. So I want to make sure that all those videos we really all can sort of stand by. And it's a bit weird to do videos, as anyone who I've got to do a video already can attest to. It's one of those things where when you're talking to a group, you can talk normally, and the second you start recording and there's no one else there, it suddenly becomes much more difficult. So what I would recommend to everybody is to write a script and read the script. I think that's a much better way of doing things. That's actually already a lot harder than you would think. We tend to write things like however and therefore, or especially English people, where we don't ever say it like that. Also, when we're reading a script, sometimes we can be a bit monotone. That's a bit of something that you'll have to get used to. But from my point of view, we make sure it's as efficient and as short as possible. So, for example, the videos that I'm making on gameplay stuff, like I don't want them to really be longer than a minute, if they can be. If they can be short, just here's a play, here's what I think about the play. And we're just going to do it like that. And then what this will hopefully allow us to do is to integrate this non-linear structure that I think I've talked to everyone about. But when we come into a day where we are looking at how we generate time, everyone can go back through the generating time videos and just rewatch them to get like a little refresher on how that's been and the things that we need to work on from that point of view. And therefore that will be the pre-scrim that people can do on their own time. Because the problem we have now is all coming together. It's just not going to be very efficient. People are worried about a massive drop in viewers. And also by the time the game starts, it's been 45 minutes since you played a solo queue. Whereas it's much nicer to finish a game of solo queue, come together, just chat for a bit, have 5-10 minutes going over any like admin type things, and then just going into the game. So that's the thing in terms of the public facing part, the player facing part, I should say. And then, as I've said multiple times, but I'm going to say it one more time, do start writing messages in the staff sections. I want us to get that conversation going. I want us to use the fact that there's a bunch of people. Yes, we're not all full-time, of course, or basically none of us are. Yes, we're all going to have very different opinions. It's going to be maybe difficult sometimes over text, but just drop anything you want or you can in those things. Even if you like see this really interesting thing that a different team is doing with data, drop it in the data one. Anything on the teams that we're going to play, of course, enemy scouting, items and champions. I saw this great thing of, Elise or whatever it might be, a way to play that, or actually just a good video to summarize it, which we could link to Eric and say, what do you think? Is this something that we want to try? Yes or no? All those kind of things. So does anyone have any questions on that?
Actually, I have a small question because how do players do reflections right now? I remember something about reflections.
Yeah.
But I don't see a channel for reflections.
Yeah, the reflections are private, so that's why you don't see it. We've actually moved them off the Discord completely because I want them to be fully
Okay,
private.
okay, makes
So
sense.
it's just me and them, and not even the other players on the team. So the whole point of that is to allow them to say whatever they feel needs to be said, and go back and forward on that way.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
Cool. Any other questions either about what I just said or anything else? No? Okay, easy. Great. Well, thanks for coming. We managed to get it to an hour. I think that's very good. I think we'll do these all hands. Like I said, we'll do one next week. Again, it will be just an update on how the process is going in your area and allow people to have any feedback. But I will message each of you individually. Probably
Next
don't
week might be hard, John, because it's
What?
bootcamp. Next week might be hard because of bootcamp.
Yeah. I mean, same time, I'm assuming bootcamp's stuff is not going to start before 10. So I was imagining that we could even do it at the same time next week. But we'll stay up to date around the timing for next week if we want to do it. And yeah,
I would not mind it being a little bit later. I'm gonna just put it out there. I'm gonna just put it out there.
Oh wait,
not a problem
you're
with
in
me.
NA.
you're
Oh my god, yeah. Totally forgot you're in NA, bro.
no,
Well, no,
he's not. He's
I'm in the UK, but I do still have
Oh.
an NA sleep schedule. Like I worked on NA schedule from the UK, so I'm like so
Ah.
used to like.
Holy
Well,
shit.
basically, I've slept 4.5 hours today, but it's chill.
It's chill. Okay, well, we'll find a time, or like I said, if you need to just sleep, we can record it and send you the recording and stuff like that. Obviously, it's a bit different for you as you're like fully in charge of a whole section, but then what I'm going to do for later today is I'm going to talk or send at least a voice message, I think, with my feedback to each of you individually after this, rather than necessarily doing it in front of everybody. And also have a couple of things for you to do over the weekend for a few people, especially like Thomas and Diane, because we don't have scrims Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And I want us to be as ready as possible come Tuesday. Right. Good.
Awesome.
So yeah, do write stuff in the staff chat. If you find anything that you want to make a short video about for the players, that's absolutely great. If you send it to me first and I'll say like, okay, good. Or like, okay, could you change this? Or could we do this? Or if you have something that you want the players to see, but you don't want to make the video yourself, message it to me and maybe I'll just make the short video, because obviously it's easier as I've spoken to them a lot. And what I'd like to try is that for a while. We're going to try it for at least a week, where I'm hoping we can even have like a tiny video of like, okay, we've got this item here. What do you think about maybe doing this instead? Now, if it's just for one player, we'll just message it to them individually. That doesn't actually need to be a video at all. But if it's something where you see some really interesting items come in, that would be good to talk about. Perfect. All right. Okay. Well, have a good weekend, guys. And yeah, we'll stay in touch.
All right. See you guys later.
See you, everyone.
Bye.
See you.